I wonder, Lena, if I can still think, here, down my heart down, and I'm sure where we need it. So I'm delegating that to Mark. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Te tu whanau hui, whaia te mahurangi ki Mārama. Tia whai take nā mahi katoa, tu mai tu kaha, aroha atu mai, tatu I a tatu katoa. For this gathering, seek knowledge for understanding, have purpose in all that you do, stand tall, be strong, let us show respect for each other. Right.
Appreciate that. Well, it's thinking the 5 months since I've seen them all. So firstly, I should actually pass on my congratulations, Lee, new council for elections. It's great to see some old faces, but it's like to see some new faces without reflecting on the election results. It's tremendous. I'm also conscious that actually, and we've got Gary here. G'day, Gary. Sorry, just to make certain that you're in the room. Admitting councillors on the.
Yeah, John Grant.
John Grant.
Oh, John, welcome, John. I didn't meet you either, John. So, welcome.
No, look forward to a personal meeting at some stage.
Great. Yes, I hope both you and Gary, well, obviously you can, John, Gary, I hope you can hear us.
I can hear you all right, thank you.
Great, thank you, Gary. That's familiar. So, look, just to acknowledge, Brian here, and Brian, he said, how's it going, Bruce? And I said, well, I come from the land of the sun, believe it or not, the unfortunate circumstances of the youth base, meaning that we are actually in a third summer of drought in Central Otago. And you can only sit down home and feel the problems and challenges that you face here in Thames, or where I've been yesterday in Gisborne as well, let alone, dare I say, Napier, where I have state responsibilities. So look, just, it's cold comfort perhaps, Len, but I know the rest of the sector feels for Thames and the other affected councils. And I know a number of them have provided support to the various councils that have been affected, but I just recognise and want to acknowledge as we start the meeting, and it might well influence some of our discussions as we go forward, particularly around risks, the substantial challenges that Thames faces and the importance, again, of local leadership. So just to recognise that as we start and move forward. The apologies I've received, and I think I've got to get this right, please, Mama. John Morrissey is not here. Is it? Delhi, thank you. Connell, John, oh, actually, John's an apology, but John's here, so that's great, John. And Peter Rebel, I think is.
We've got two Johns. Got John Morrissey and John Grant.
Yes, I've been informed that John Grant, as he was not going to be here, so obviously is, so I can believe I'm honest. So that's good. Great to have you here, John. So we've got three: John Morrissey, Delhi, and Peter. I'll move from the chair that we said that. Thank you. I think Terry's seconding that. All those in favour, say aye. Those against, Kerry. We do have a public forum or a request for some time in public, and Mr. Wilson, I think that's you over there. So I'd invite you to come forward to the table and talk with us. Bruce, we normally allow about 5 minutes. Yep. How long do you need?
4.5.
4.5, brilliant. Okay. We're going to, what will happen, obviously, I'm sure you're used to being informed about it, is that invite you to say what you'd like to say to us. I think it's around the council mark. Then I will open it for councillors to ask you questions and clarification. And we can conclude. So welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
Great to have interested members of the community here. I'll be keen to say.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you everyone for your time. I also acknowledge the difficulty that people are going through, particularly on council, where they actually have to get out there and do stuff. You know, witness the fact that this meeting's been deferred by a month. Having said that, perhaps my subject, which is really governance, becomes more important in times like this because it should allow responses to be efficient and effective. So this is my second meeting of this august gathering, and I'm thinking of putting in a Freedom of Information request to see whether this is in fact a record, because I'm not sure how many members of the public can come to such an exciting meeting and enjoy it like I do. So that's only an accountant would say that, or a former accountant. So what is council mark? My proposal is simple, that the TCD Council enrolls in the council mark programme. What is it? Well, the chairman knows far more about it than that because he's an independent assessor, and you can look that up. But basically, council mark is a programme designed to improve the public's knowledge, the works councils are doing in their communities, and to support individual councils to further improve service and the value they provide. It has 4 priorities: governance, leadership and strategy, and that's really, as far as I'm concerned, the key one. Financial decision making and transparency, service delivery and asset management, and communication and engagement. So I won't dwell on the details. You will all know, and particularly the chairman, a lot more about this than I do. So in doing my research, it's all fairly new to me. I had to do a bit of a history lesson. There were some major changes in local government in the 80s. The aim, I believe, was to get councils to look more like the private sector. Why, I can't understand. But as a result, the role of elected councils and chief executives changed. The responsibilities and complications for councillors increased and has continued to increase. So accountability, public consultation ad nauseam, more and more complex infrastructure, new Resource Management Act, major increases in compliance obligations and so on. And you will know about these things better than I. And I believe that prior to this, councillors were considered to be part-time. I'm sure you would have a different view as to the situation now, but I suspect councillors still don't get enough support, physical and human, in terms of office space, computers, whatever it is, because it's such a difficult job. I know there are lots of meetings, as I know you did. The agendas are long, reading time is short, issues are complex, and the risk of error and omission is significant. And with all due respect, you all come from very many different walks of life, and you can't be expected to have the detailed technical knowledge that is required to manage an organisation of this size and complexity. So I gather, and I'm not party to it, that the result is that the separation of council and management is decreasing, with councillors having to cede more and more control to management. In that respect, this certainly is like a commercial business operation. So, but no matter how confident you can be in the management and the quality of management, I think it's prudent for the elected members to seek independent analysis review of how the place is being run and the governance. You will get that assurance all the time from management, but I'm a very strong believer that you need to go outside of that for an independent review, and what better place to start than council mark? That's what it's set up for. There are many possible objections. Cost is one. I believe it costs about $25,000, and then some time. So $100,000 on a $100 million budget, 0.1%. If you can't find that level of improvement out of the report, I'd be surprised. So what are the benefits? I had a quick look through your agenda. I noticed that on the strategic risk list, poor governance and decision making does exist. It's right down at the bottom. You know, that's a matter of a judgment. I would suggest that improving that would make all the other ones a lot easier to manage and look after better. And then on the, I always get confused with the terminology in this area, but on the assurance report, you have this 3 lines of defence model, and line number 3 is independent assurance. And then it says internal, well, I'm not sure how independent that is, and external audit and regulator review. Well, auditors don't really do this sort of stuff. They do other stuff. And I'm not really sure what the regulator does. But, I think a focused independent review of governance and how the place is run, reporting to elected councillors, is a great idea. Other benefits, transparency, there's reports out there that tell you how you're going. Obviously, service and budget improvements. And particularly for this council, I suspect, given where you are in the cycle and some of the changes and in management, gives you an opportunity to show how good you are and how you can improve. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you for that, Bruce. Appreciate it. Councillors, do we have any questions for Bruce?
I have one, Bruce, if that's all right. This is designed to work with councils. How many other councils around the country are using Council?
I think it's about 1/3 off the top of my head, not a majority. I would say that your neighbour Karakia is top of the pops.
So around 20.
Well, I think it's more than that, Bruce, maybe.
So I think
30 would be the number.
Yeah. And they are going through, I believe they're going through their own continuous improvement process at the moment to improve their product, if that's the right word.
how long has it been in place,
I
Bruce?
don't know about how long, 4 or 5 years, again, Bruce would know. Maybe longer.
It's been longer than that, I think, recently, because they're into the second round of cycles of reviews, which mean that you might have been through a 3rd, so it's around about 6 to 8 years. It's been going.
That helps because it's new to me, so
Yes,
just give you a bit of a perspective on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? I just missed, which organisation, the independent review organisation, were you talking about?
It's called Council Mark. It's an initiative of the local government New Zealand organisation. So I think they saw a need for this to help councils, try and improve their governance. So they've supported it, I presume, financially and certainly, with their imprimatur.
Gary, if I could help Bruce with that, they set up, local government New Zealand set up an independent board made up of people external to local government New Zealand to run the program, which gives it that level of independence from local government New Zealand, which obviously has an interest in the performance of the sector. And it's essentially through them. And there's the other Bruce Wilson has noted it's a voluntary process for which I think around about 30 councils have engaged with. You can see them. If you go to the local government New Zealand website, you can see essentially the council division of that and actually who's in and what are those grades. Bruce, you were saying quite rightly, Karakia has been rated highly by that, certainly relative to other councils across the country.
Okay, another question is, I gather only the council can request Council Mark get involved, not individual councillors if they had a concern.
Oh, I would think it has to be a council-wide thing.
Yeah. I mean, there is a substantial cost to it, Gary. You said 25. Honestly, I don't know what the cost is.
No,
but I would have thought the number might have been 60 of that sort of nature.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions for Bruce? Yes or no?
So is it and it's getting a little bit into the detail, but is it like a thing you subscribe to, or is it, do you pay every 3 years for the review to be done, or how does it?
It's a review carried out in their cycle, which is 2 or 3 years, and you pay each time. You can jump in and jump out, I suspect, yes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Bruce.
Thank you.
I'm going to no further questions. It may well be with sort of the general sense of people wanting to understand it more, that perhaps the website is referred to councillors for that. So thank you for that. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yes, and I'd like to move, thanks to Bruce that I received these, thank you. Got the motion, in those in favour, please say aye. Against, this carried. The interesting thing, as you've actually heard, I'm an assessor to Council Park. It was difficult to know whether I should declare interested or not. But if you'd like to understand more, I'm very happy to provide my insight on it. Quite frankly, I can't do any because I've got too many irons in the local government fire. So it's something I do really.
Bruce, it's very hard to hear you. You keep coming in and out a bit. Very hard to.
Because I've got my voice, Gary. I wonder if we can try and resolve that. Sorry, Gary. That means we could be a bit closer to something.
Stop.
How's that, Gary? Did you say better? Oh, thank you.
No, that's a lot better.
Oh, great. You'll have to stand there, Len. What's that?
So close.
That's in front of us.
No, you can't pull it any further because then you cause a.
Trip hazard.
Is it? So what is that? Push button. Sorry, I'm just gonna.
Shimmy this way a little bit, those tables, there we go.
You can put it on a chair.
Yeah, so we. Just
There we go. That's enough.
There we go.
That's
Thank you. Gary, thanks for together.
Put it there. Right by
Right, so Gary, put the microphone right in front of me, so hopefully you can hear me.
I can hear you now.
Right, in terms of our agenda, thank you for that time with Bruce, and thank you to Bruce. In terms of 1.4, I haven't been informed of any additions to the agenda. I would like to note that on reflection from where we've got to with our agenda, there are probably some agenda changes I would like to recommend as we go forward, because I think there are some things we can bring to very similar way to what Bruce is saying, enhance our risk governance. One of the things I would like to do is at the conclusion of the meeting, I would invite the committee just to stay and have a chance to have a discussion with Aileen. That would be great. Thank you. Are there any matters in front of us with this agenda that you need to raise your interests? Being none, let's move on then to probably the Paku show. Welcome, Paku. You've been a busy man, so very keen to hear your reporting to us, please. But obviously, you could start with the risk report. That would be useful. Thank you.
Okay, so. Thank you, the chair. So in terms of the risk report, I've today asked the accountable risk owners to attend this meeting to answer any questions in regards to the strategic risk updates that I've provided. They're closer to the information and they're closer to the detail of that. There is one emerging risk. And I would go to say it's actually an emerged risk rather than emerging, and that's in regards to cybersecurity threats. This is a continuous changing beast. And the action status update, we have closed out a number of the findings. However, when you overlay the impact of for each of these risks, I'm reluctant to reduce the risk rating. So theoretically, if you start chipping away at the controls, you can reduce the level of risk. But from an impact perspective, when you overlay that over, I'm reluctant to do that. So that's my stance on that. So hopefully you've read the report and I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Paku, again. I know it's a thorough report, which is fine. I wonder if members have any questions. I probably have one overarching question. Would it be happy? I'd just like to ask it. Paku, I couldn't help but note, we're a delayed meeting, which I appreciate that, and I appreciate also the timing, therefore, of the reports that have been presented. But I wonder, in light of the cyclone and the impact, would we have this? I'm wondering, does that colour your view about our strategic risks? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I think, look, there's some other risks in the control in terms of our emerging risks.
Without totally rejigging the agenda. I think it might be helpful if you tell us those, because actually I wonder what our real risks are. It's really what I'm coming, which is, and I want to make it very safe for you. This report was written for a meeting that was meant to be a month earlier, and it was not designed for really the question that I'm giving you. But I think where we're at, it will be worthwhile hearing from you as our risk advisor how we should perhaps relook at this strategic risk environment that we're in.
Yeah, through the chair, from my perspective, look, there's a lot going on in our district, and quite honestly, there's just we're attending to a lot of stuff right now. So, for example, the funding that we've received, gratefully, obviously, but being involved in how we administer that. And covering anything to do with any process around that. That's just bottom line operational stuff. But in terms of the bigger picture stuff, it's really, you all know this, and I'm probably speaking about the things that would keep me awake, but it's, it's the roading and the impacts on the on businesses and communities as a whole, really. And how that funding is going to work through into that, into the LRTP, etc., in regards to those assets and stuff. So, honestly, I don't think this is news to you, but these are things that kind of concern me from a risk perspective, and I'm sure the ELT probably have a stance on that.
Bruce, following up on your question, this was written originally on the 19th of January, and there's really no update, and that's why I'm a little surprised when we've had the biggest storm to hit Coromandel, and it's not featuring here. I'm just at a loss.
And Gary, you just said exactly what I said before. And I just want to be to reflect that in fairness to management, it is quite difficult to turn an agenda around. But I guess what I'm doing here is permitting a broader discussion about our strategic risks. So I would be keen, if we're going to have a discussion, we advance it on the basis of actually what does our strategic risk environment look like, or perhaps more importantly, what steps should we take to review what is our strategic risk environment. I mean, I think there's something we need to do, is to be honest, Aileen, and that's what I'm looking to ask the question on. Yes, Terry.
Yeah, so yeah, what George is saying, I agree totally. And we are in the recovery mode, so I don't know if we're in the right position to actually understand fully what the implications are. We sort of know graphically around roading and graphically around business attitudes, but really the effects of that we're yet to understand fully. So I think this is something that's going to develop, but as we build that plan, some of these risks might move around in terms of priority. So let's wait for that recovery session to start.
Through the chair, I think you're quite right. I think there's a lot of information that we need to kind of get. This is going to move, but certainly a risk of it, and what that might look like. To kind of get that on the table.
It's my view, Parku, is it's not that we need to add. Well, I think there actually we probably need to add to the strategic risks that we face. But in light of the challenges to the district, actually it will be for quite a considerable period of time. I think we even have a different way of looking at the existing risks. So, health and safety is still going to be a risk. It's not like we're going to disappear. But what are the risks around, I don't know, disposal of contaminated silt, or if we have to move a person out, what a bit asbestos, in line, whatever that sort of stuff is, it suddenly changes the nature and the way in which the lens through which we look at the strategic risks, let alone, and I was sharing with Aileen, the risk that we aren't really, the organisation needs to transition to really a super recovery agency. To be honest, I would think a significant strategic risk is our relationship with the Crown. And in a minute, you know, that's not having a crack at them, but actually we will not effect recovery without cooperation, without partnership, whatever words we like to put around that. And this will test the quality of our relationship and their relationship with us. So what I'm trying to reflect here is actually, but actually it also might be that one or two of those strategic risks become a lesser aspect for us. They'll still be there, but actually the committee, from a governance perspective and to assist council, should be focused on something a wee bit different. Aileen, looks like you're about to burst into song.
I just really want to defend Paku again, and that Paku's been donkey deep in the EOC for a long, long time, and then has had some leave, and so that's sort of unfair to try and get Paku to put all the strategic risks on the table today. But we do have the leadership team, or most of it here. We actually could have a bit of a discussion, but it would be quite unstructured at the moment.
No, and look, Aileen, perhaps I've tried to, in a sense, break the eggshell, but say, so how do we reassemble that?
Yep,
and I'm wondering if there is a feeling about the need for, well, it wouldn't be irrelevant for us to do an annual review of our strategic risks, but to actually realise that we need to do it through a different lens would be my view. And so I'm talking about a different meeting, to be honest. Rather than asking you to suddenly do something unstructured. So I think that's where I would perhaps like to suggest that if the rest of the committee of the mind, we might look to see what would happen. Donna,
that's exactly what I was just going to say through the chair, that Paku and I had talked about it, and we're looking at workshop opportunity to bring the strategic risks back, particularly for that discussion, especially with the new council, new audit risk committee. It is something that's on our agenda. Working out the best time for that to happen.
Yes, and amongst all the pressure of actually dealing with real recovery. Yes, Terry.
Well, I just think that poking our nose at the moment is a three water situation, because that's really taking up a lot of our drama. So maybe around that time, if there's some decisions around that, maybe those decisions could be structured around that. Because if that's in, that's a big change, and if it's out, it's a big change. So we need to really understand. And it's just annoying that we still waiting.
Well, look, I get the feeling that actually there's a realisation, I realise that wrong word, but actually to move the debate on that there is probably a need for a risk workshop of a more general nature. Donna, and I'm conscious that and thank you to you and Paku that you're thinking about this. I also take Aileen's point. It's better that it's a structured one rather than just us pooling our knowledge now without necessarily everybody that should be in the room being in the room. So if the committee's of that mind, I like to suggest, Donna, that we actually do that, and we be honest, I think it's sooner rather than later. If I can be honest, Terry, this is about us and the recovery. Three Waters is going to be part of that, but I don't think that should be the reason. It's the fact of the event that which is, as you've said, with cyber risk, is actually an emerged issue. It's not even a risk. We've got it. But then there are the risks that flow out of addressing that. Brilliant. Okay, that's good. Donna and Karakia, if I could then also suggest, you folk know that my policy is beg, borrow and steal. Could I invite you to have a chat with Gisborne? We actually went through this process yesterday, and it was useful, and it would probably give you, Donna, a heads up on what that could look like. And Paku, how we re-looked at our risk, strategic risk schedule through the lens of, bearing in mind, their context is different to our context, but actually the principles of what they did, I think, are fairly relevant for us here. Well, thank you for that. And Aileen, thank you again. I want to stress this is not a criticism of the report we have. It's a reflection that actually it's time bound and the world has turned substantially for us in the January, early February period. So thank you for that. Having said that, members, it is still a relevant report. We still have to deal with BAU. We still have a cyber security risk. There's no two ways about it. So are there comments that you would like to have on essentially what are the BAU strategic risks we have at this stage? All right. I think I might have a couple, if I could, Paku. And it relates to a couple of matters, but it also relates into your internal audit plan. I was looking at the, and I'm on page 6. I was looking at the, well, we call it poor asset management, which I think is reflecting the risk, and there were some outstanding actions around Asset Finder. And I also related it to your internal audit program, which I think there is a 24-25 type thing. Well, here we are saying let's have a discussion later about strategic risks, but obviously our assets are under pressure now. We had a briefing, Aileen and I, from our auditors on Monday, which will clearly reflect an attention to our assets come 30 June. I'm just wondering if you could characterise for me now, where are we at with Asset Finder and its capacity to meet our needs now, know the condition of our assets, and to be able to put that into some form of credible plan. And it might be that Bruce, poor old Bruce, he knows that I'm looking through him with the back of my eyes, but would he, would there be some? He's gone. Oh, no, he's here. Oh, he's gone. If there's anything you'd like to add or comment on that, I don't know.
Through the chair, I've got name on.
Oh, right, okay. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Emma. Appreciate that.
Kia ora koutou. So we've made some good progress on Asset Finder moving to the next version. So that's a positive step. What we don't have capacity yet is the in the field ability to capture, recognise when assets have disappeared or inspect them in the field. So the park staff are using workarounds, using asset IDs and backloading the data. So yeah, we've made a good step forward, but there's still challenges in the field and Asset Finder.
Eamon, how quickly does that mean you're able to bring asset information to a management and governance level? What's the time lag? If you're doing manual workarounds, it doesn't mean it's instantaneous. Whereas what you're suggesting is you've got your people out around the district. If they can upload quickly, we're quicker to market with our information.
It's really balancing their priorities. So they can go out and inspect an asset, have a kind of spreadsheet, and then they've got 2 days work that they need to do to put it back in the system. And if they can fit in that 2 days work straight away, that's good. But they normally have other things that distract them away, and the asset data doesn't come back into the system quickly. So it can be, it's not just 2 days, because there's a balance of things. In theory, the resource and the time is not huge, but practically it could add a few weeks, maybe a month to the process.
So you can see where I'm interested. I'm coming from the governance end. I need to know the state of my assets in the current difficult environment. I'm conscious that I'll be expecting Donna and her team to take that asset, that condition assessment, to think about valuations and impairments and impact to our assets. Does that mean that we're struggling to be able to do that, or is it just that there's a time lag in our information?
There's an additional challenge. There's a risk around practically people inspect assets, they find something's wrong with them, and they want to go and fix them. And so the priority to get the information back in the system gets less, and there's some risk if you're not constantly following up, making sure staff are following a good process, that some of the asset data gets lost. You don't even know something's been replaced because it's been fixed before you even know it's broken. So yeah, and that's a challenge, because everyone wants the public want to see things fixed. That's the priority, and getting it back into the system needs, when the tools aren't as efficient as they can be, needs pushing and direction to make sure it happens.
Look, I'm very keen as a committee that we're solution focused. So thank you for your very honest assessment. But it does strike me that the recommendations that you're following through on from the actions, which is that sort of seamless relationship between inspection and uploading. Are we whistling on the wind, or is there a plan that will enable us to achieve that within some form of defined timeframe?
It's really an IT challenge, and I know there's other priorities in that space. So I wouldn't be able to give a time frame on when we're going to have that seamless transaction.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. I think I can't take it further than this at this stage, Donna, but it does.
My understanding through the chair is that it is moving forward, and IT are working on it. And it is a priority. So it is. There's a finance system, which is right at a critical point.
Of course, yes. Sorry,
MIS. They have been working. They have been doing work in parallel with it. But yes. They do know that it's critical, and it is the next thing that will be done.
Okay, thank you then. Terry?
Yeah, I'm just saying, if we go back and look at the asset management, we set it up a few years ago now. I think, is it fair to say that we've done a lot of the above ground stuff, but it's the underground stuff that's causing the delays?
Yeah, I think that's a bit too general. We did have quite a good CCTV program running for a while that informed our last LTP. Lots of pipe information from Thames. The above ground is always easier. So I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think that it's probably we have been able to address our higher risk issues. And it's the detail that kind of gets, or the lesser risk assets and the detail around them that gets missed. So where there's a footpath or a park bench, and we're not getting to those ones, that's probably okay because there's less risk around those. So not so much above ground, below ground, but the higher risk aspects we're addressing, and the lower ones we're not probably getting to.
Okay.
Okay, Parker. Thank you for that, Emil. That's, and again, appreciate the openness with which you've spoken to that. Parker, this is something which you can sense I might ask a few more questions on as we go through. I'm conscious of the LTP, but I'm more conscious about the immediate impact, even on our critical assets, and actually having a level of knowledge and data behind it. I'm thinking also of actually being able to convince other people that they might want to contribute to our infrastructure being fixed. So read the crowd. So look, I'd just like us to reflect on that. Again, you can see my trouble. I'm probably going into another part of it, a future workshop, Donna, that would be good to have. But I'm glad we've got that focused on. Look, the other risk, look, I couldn't help but notice and agree with your cybersecurity risk. So I guess the question will become, how do we deal with that going forward with the committee, Parker? Have you had any ideas on that?
Through the chair, I think let me get a deep dive risk assessment.
Yes.
One of the things that we're doing the best that we can in terms of our IT response and security responses, and that from that perspective, this could come down to human error. So that's an area where we need to work on.
Yeah.
Opening an email with a corrupt attachment is one of my biggest fears. So that comes down to human error. So and again, simple things like two sign-on authentication, that sort of stuff. So there's a lot we can do, and I think let's get down to the detail, and I present a full report to you and come back with the recommendations.
Look, and again, context is everything. I'm not wanting to heighten fear that we are uncontrolled, but I think you're reflecting in your report the externalities have heightened us as a risk for any organisation, let alone us at good old TCDC. Okay, that's brilliant. Yes, Lee.
We've had discussions with some of the community board elected members about the potential need for further governance workshops. And during the initial inductions that we did, there was some workshops or some induction sessions on cyber security. Is there a need for us to revisit that with elected members so that everyone is aware of potential risks? And I'm aware that during the induction, we had a lot going on and not everyone was here. So I find myself a little concerned that some elected members, particularly at community board member level, were not here and have not completely taken on board the potential cyber security risks. Is there a need to revisit that?
Through the chair, that's a question I could pose to our ITIS manager. I mean, she's across the where the risks are, who are most susceptible. So probably I would pass that back to her to kind of answer and come back with something. And it might be as simple as she provides, I don't know, some sort of information or actually come to a meeting and to
Might be an option.
I can through the chair also support me on this, that the community board members are using their own PCs and got access in and out and really aren't trained anything around cyber security. Sometimes even normal stuff is difficult. So there is a lack of understanding about the importance of doing things and setting things. But I support that 100%.
I think look, I think that's right, and I'm glad you raised that, Len and Terry. We need to always be conscious of, even dare I say it for me, to be honest. But with my engagement with TCDC, I just wondered, your point, Len's well done. On page 7 of your report, you indicated the implemented layers of measures to control vulnerability, which makes sense. But I did note none of those 4 seem to have exactly the risk you said, that the biggest risk is us, as in people. And I just wondered whether, in terms of completeness of response to the risk, whether it would be relevant to have a, training of staff, whatever induction, whatever it is, there's something there that, what do they call it? Penetration testing, that would be relevant to see as a control layer there. Okay, brilliant. Can we move to the recommendations then, please? Look, I'm not going to suggest that we add a recommendation that Donna come back to us with a date. I think we know.
A question.
Oh, sorry. Gary, have you got a question? Thank you, Len.
Yes, I do. Reason I'm not being critical, Paku, but that's why I was taken aback that a report written 2 months ago has not changed really much at all. And just one example was with the storm and the problems we've got, the probable legal actions we'll be facing from people who their homes have been flooded by the storm, all the other issues. And I think that's a dramatically high risk we need to consider right now. I know of properties that have been given consents, just finished building, they're flooded already. And I can just see legal problems being high on the list of what we have to face. That's one example I can think of, and I'll leave it there. But I think we have to rethink this very carefully.
I think that it emphasises the need for a workshop, Gary, which is outside of a formal meeting where we have that. A formal risk committee meeting where we have the chance to discuss that. So, as I was indicating, I don't need to pass the motion, but you'll organise something, Donna. We can have a discussion about that. Because I'm indeed having to look at all these aspects. And Gary, I would, by the way, endorse the lens with which you're doing it, but we need to do it across everything. So look, the motion is that we received Paku's report, and I think it is important in this case we do note the date of 19 January, and that we improve the inclusion of cybersecurity as a strategic. Does it make a lot of sense to me? So do I have a mover and a seconder for that?
Yeah, have a move.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Riga. Let's take it from there. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Thank you. Paku, the assurance report. I think it's next.
Yes, so the assurance report, look, I would say that our internal audits are behind the 8 ball through the chair. just as a result of Gabrielle, but so we need to get back on track. We're continuing to monitor our audit findings, close out. In terms of procedural development and improvement, this is ongoing. And with my allocated resource or a business partner that works in this space has been by and large involved in the FMIS Council finance project. So there's a lot going on in this space, and you know, I've provided an update accordingly.
Thanks, Paku. Are there any questions folk would like to raise with Paku on the assurance report? Paku, I don't actually have any trouble with the diversion. You say you're behind the 8 ball. You know, and to be honest, in the state that we're in, again, this comes back to the issue of the context is everything. And if you know, if your staff have to be deployed elsewhere, that makes sense. I know you know where I was yesterday, but I'm thinking of internal elsewhere, where you have the sorts of events that we have, they get deployed elsewhere. You know, whether it's actually the accuracy of our claims into NEMA, which is important for our cash flow, which is probably a risk right at the moment. I don't know, Donna. I wouldn't be certain. You could tell me about that. You know, the ability for us to claim and actually have internal audit support. So I can accept the situation. There is a level to which the resources got to be used in the best place where it is. So I think probably what I'd look for in the next report is actually how context may be affecting what can't be done. And that might be just an appropriate time then, Parker, to say, by the way, thank you for your commitment to trying to make certain we keep this program going, but I sort of want to take the pressure off you as well, if it's appropriate. If you look at page 13 there is the forward-looking program. Most of them are not being started. I mean, the reality of it is, should we cut our cloth and say, well, let's not start them because there are other things that actually your team need to be focused on? That's a question.
Through the chair, I think, look, we're back into it. I think, yes, possibly one will flip into the next year and we might have to do a bit of a rearrangement, but we probably will reduce our delivery down to one additional audit this year, and that's it. So yeah, we can move it.
Right. Okay. I mean, I think what I'm. Oh, sorry, Kieran.
That's all right. I just want to make the note about the reconciliation being invested asset revenue and valuation associated assets. So we've had a big discussion around it with Donna and showing what we've had to do. So that was a big discussion for us about not bringing all those revaluations into our decisions around rating. So it's something we should be working on and dealing with as we move forward. Is something that's really important. So
I'm just missing the point. Whereabouts in the agenda are you, Terry?
Sorry? Page
yep.
second down the bottom.
This is the timely reconciliation between QV and our rating database.
No, it was between invested asset revenue and the valuations associated.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
So we revalued, and the number was huge, and the impact was going to come through on the rates. It was pretty impressive. So we had to re-look at that, squeeze it up, and we've got some risk going down the line about how we can deal with that going forward.
The decision on whether to appreciate the increase.
It's quite a big number.
Just through the chair, there is a paper in the agenda on that subject.
Yeah. So I think thank you, Donna, for reminding us that. Look, let's hold some comments over that because I would have a few. So actually, in amongst this, I mean, admittedly, again, the context of everything, this is the December. That's a pretty good move on most of the recommendations, Paku. So well done to your team. I'm pleased to see that it looks like, and I presume it's subject, particularly in the audit area, to Carl's sign off, but we've actually done the work. So that's incredibly encouraging. You see, I'm not going to let you up on the position we're in at the moment, but I did have a question around page 16, and am really thrilled again that you craft this in the area of efficiency or streamlining or whatever it is in terms of the efforts. Rate remissions could be a matter that is real for us in the current environment. I didn't quite understand was this is work that has been done and completed, so we're comfortable that we've got things that they're most streamlined?
Through the chair, we've held an improvement process workshop with people that are dealing with rates remissions. And it's a lengthy process, and we're looking at how can we streamline that, or what can we do to make this process easier for everybody and to take the angst of the process for people, obviously the staff, but also for the community groups that are receiving these. So really that's all I can say about that. We haven't completely finished that piece of work, but we just see it as an important piece. John and Mike is involved in.
Yes, through the chair, I can comment. Part of the reason why we did this review also is, and it was before, obviously.
Yes, that's right.
What we've experienced in the last month, but is that we're coming up to having to review our remissions policies, like in line with our long-term plan, and there have been some issues with the policy. With administration's been really huge over the last term. So what I was wanting Parker and his team to do is to actually have a look at it, streamline it, come up with some recommendations for improvement so that we could feed those into the policy as well when we do that review.
But I was very much on the line that I think you said, Parker, which is actually how do we make this less stressful and more clear? And of course, you quite rightly pointed out, Donna, and I'm overlaying this with a potential, yet to crystallise, but a potential, I presume, that we get more applications. So unfortunately, the cyclone has come at a very inconvenient time, doesn't it? So again, I'm trying to perhaps get a sense about the prioritisation being able to be given, just as I've raised the issues around asset management. This is the problem of a bit of BAU, which was clearly and thankfully in progress, but actually its completion would be valuable as we try and address the recovery. And I'd raise that as a question, perhaps rhetorical, I think it's necessary.
Are there two different levels there? Is there one, the potential for rates remission applications, and I know that our team got ahead of the game in terms of damaged and stickered properties, but the numbers were not that big. But the other potential that I'm wondering about is rates remissions applications from people who have accommodation or properties that have been affected by weather events.
Exactly.
So is there potential for that to be at a higher level than normal? So, and I know you'd go into that in more detail further on, look at the rates.
So through the chair, we're not seeing it at the moment. We're not seeing, an influx of applications, because we also, in the rates remission policy, we have financial hardship remission as well. And we're not seeing applications under that criteria either at the moment.
Is it a bit early?
It may be.
I think it is. I think people are still hearing about it, and just trying to get on, get things sorted out. So I think there will be a bit of a feel going forward that they may, if it's available, still look at it.
I mean, I think our generalised experience from COVID, Len, was people still paid their rates, which is tremendous. And equally, as you said, Terry, that again, there's a different type of impact on people, which may or may not raise that. I'm just trying to think, are we prepared? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Paku? So thank you, Paku, for that. The motion is that we receive the report. I think I'm also, without wanting to create too much work, inviting you to come back with the next meeting with actually, is there a reworked program here, which probably will be informed by our hopeful workshop around the big issues and the big risks. But actually, I think I'm trying to reflect the committee gives you permission to change things or come back to us with recommendations to changes, given the position that we're in. Yes, Martin.
Yeah, I only sort of want like a maybe 1 or 2 sentence answer because I don't want to hold things up. But the FMIS financial management information system, where are we at as far as that being implemented or partially implemented?
So through the chair, we are looking at a go live of 1 May, 1st of May at the moment. So we're right in the thick of it. They're doing a lot of testing at the moment. A lot of work is involving like the finance staff pretty much full time on it. So yeah, we're right at the very crux of it.
Cool, thank you. Concise and short.
Thank you for asking the question, though. It was a question I had as well, Martin, because a few things in the internal assurance and the internal audit that is relevant to FME is being done. Can I move from the chair that we receive the report? Over a second, please. Thank you, Lee. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Paku. Paku, you're leading us off on health and safety as well.
Yeah, so in terms of the share, I think the standouts for this report is the ongoing proactive work on our nasty 9 hazards. This is the controls around managing our nasty 9 hazards, and that's around training, our review assurance procedures, and providing advice out to the organisation. They stood up really well in terms of the response with Gabrielle, providing our teams in the response unit advice around, health and safety hazards out in the field in that way as well, and that's probably not reflected in this report. However, the other thing is we have undertaken our first bow tie assessment. This is an assessment of personal confrontation. Personal confrontation is one of our bigger hazards, and this is a public coming into our offices or our building consents team going out and delivering news about building consent or compliance. So and we have had Brian, who is our lead BLT member for this, and he was involved in the process. So we've had a great outcome and a lot of good actions or recommendations out of that process.
Thank you, Paku. So, members, do we have questions for Paku, please? Or indeed, Brian, if you want to get in, we're going to get hook into the bow tie system as well. So, can't be Brian off the hook. As people think of any questions, can I say, Paku, thank you, or perhaps I should be saying to Aileen and the team, thank you that I've seen senior ownership over the nasty 9. It is actually, as a risk governor, really encouraging to see the commitment, Aileen, at a senior level to those areas. It gives a sense that there's ownership and presumably drive into the organisation, which is superb. Thank you for that. Do we have questions for Paku or indeed Brian and the team here, Terry?
Yeah, I just, again, a really report, apart from the plane crash and maybe person getting injured around a coastal, there's not a lot in there that happened, so that's a good sign. Pointing to the right direction, things are happening. Are you feeling that near misses that are being reported? Are you feeling that's coming through as a flow for you?
Yeah, this has always been a tension through the chair, so it's a little bit of a tension for me. I think, yes, by and large, we do rely on our partner organisations to provide us with information as well. So we're talking about contractors as well, our roading contractors and that to provide into this report as well. Because at the end of the day, under a PCB arrangement, they're our workers as well. So we're relying on that information. We can only do a report on what we can from that. By and large, yes, I think so.
I think it's valuable, Paku, that we are reporting on the contractors. I mean, as you say, combined PCBU. So I think we've talked before in the committee about the relationship that council has with them around health and safety, which I think will always have to be a work on, if I can call it that, or we have to keep paying attention to that. Thank you. Other questions for Paku? Paku, one of the questions again, I'm a crack record here, mate. Current situation, mental well-being and safety for staff. Can you give me any comments on that, please?
Yeah, to the chair, interesting you bring that up. I just had a conversation with our new health and safety business partner, and that's one of the things that is keeping me up at night. Yes, we're looking at what interventions we can put in place and what support we can provide to our staff, in short.
Right, yeah.
So that's definitely a thing. That's definitely a piece of work that we're
cool. Look, and obviously, as I say, the next report's going to be quite different. I'd be very keen to see what those specific actions have been, because I suspect, my suspicion, the wrong word. My assumption is that actually things are increased in terms of the risk to staff, and consequently I'd be very keen to see how that rolls out. Again, not a criticism, there's nothing here, but I'm just reflecting my crack record that actually, the cyclone changes everything.
So share just a quick comment about that. We're going to focus on leadership identification and leadership responsibility for staff wellbeing.
Yep.
So that's going to be our target audience.
Great. I think that's right. Thank you.
Bruce. I'm reluctant to get into too much detail around this, but one area that does I find myself personally concerned about, and not concerned about, but keen to see progress, is this whole area of personal complication risk, and the role that we as elected members can take in helping to manage and define and set a tone for that risk. And I know that we've had this discussion before, and we've all made really good efforts at helping to manage that level of risk and to send the message back to the people that we're dealing with, that confrontation, abuse, personal abuse of staff and elected members is not acceptable. And I would just like to send a message again to staff that you have my support in any situation where you need to call on us to help send that message again. And I've seen it happen many times, especially through the cyclone period, where we've had police have had to be called on a couple of occasions. I think overall the situation has been managed really well, and the number of incidents has been very low in comparison to what's been going on. But again, I just want to send a message to the staff that we have your backs, and we'll continue to have your backs, and we will continue to send that message so that you're supported in what you're trying to achieve here. So don't be under any illusions that we're behind you on that.
Thanks, Stephen. I think that's important, Martin.
Yes, at the bottom of page 23, the appendix 2 about bow tie risk assessment summary report. So reference number 6 talks about the ongoing and increased antisocial behaviours from transient and homeless. But I would suggest that and then it talks about having health and mental health issues, but I would suggest that it's not only the transient and homeless that have got health and mental health issues. And then also when they talk about recommendations, it talks about council review of strategies, but for the transient and homeless, but presumably we haven't got any strategies for those at the moment. So does that actually mean developing strategies rather than reviewing? Yes, right.
Thank you for that. Right, any other questions for there isn't? And I realised, Lynn, as you were indicating the tone from the top and support, can I just also reiterate, when I looked at number 4, the fourth major incident in the summary on the bottom of page 21 indicated the need to stop people from the way they were working. I think I've got the right one there. And well done. I think call stop because work is unsafe is actually really important. So firstly, well done, and total support to staff if they are prepared to say stop and then check rather than just continuing. I think that's really
It
important. as
helped
well.
through the situation too, which is good too.
Yeah.
Through it.
Yeah.
Trying to make it right, so it's good.
Sorry, can I just, through the chair, ask one last question on the out of range devices? Do we have processes in place and devices aimed at keeping people safe when they are working alone out of range?
Through the chair, we do have a number of things we put in place. Just the out of range devices, just one intervention. Some of them might be that they have called in, that they actually staff know where they are when they're going to be back. So there's a whole number of things, but yes, in terms of going outside of the area of coverage, in terms of mobile phones, yes, they have.
The reason I ask is that the census are out there at the moment, and I used to have census staff, and it was always a major problem. The census staff that are out there now have mechanisms and devices in place to keep them safe. I wonder if there's any advantage to having a discussion with them about what they're using to keep their census staff safe on the 309 road, or whether there is no cell phone coverage, and whether there's any advantage to us investigating what devices they use and whether they could help us.
Through the chair, yes, most definitely. We're always looking at improving our processes and our discussion.
Safe out there is.
Thanks, Len. Can I move to the recommendation, which is that we receive the report of a mover and seconder, please? Thank you,
Bruce,
Terry.
just before you.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go for it, John. Sorry, I didn't. Yeah, go for it, man.
Thank you. It's just a little challenging doing this remotely, and look forward to being there for the next one. But I have a question through the chair in regard to the reports that have been received in regard to the earthquake risk of the buildings that the council occupy. And I just wonder if Pāku could just update us as to whether these have been considered and whether they should be recorded in here as well as a risk.
Well, through the chair, I have done an assessment as that's component of the decision-making process, but I'd have to leave that over to the leadership team to answer that in full. My part in the process was completing an assessment or looking at all the facts and data and coming up with an assessment to inform the where to from now steps. So I probably need to pass that to the leadership to kind of decide, talk about that.
Any comment that needs to be made?
So I've sent the councillors the relevant documentation that Pāku put together, and in summary, the relevant documentation basically says we have a time frame by which we have to be taking steps, and we are taking steps. So we've had a workshop with councillors about the building and the various solutions, and we need to take the next steps and come back with another workshop with a long list of options for councillors to consider. So that's sort of where it's at. I'd suggest it's a project we need to be tracking, and it should be sitting in our projects list, and councillors should be keeping an eye on it from that perspective.
Right. Look, thank you for that, John. I can also see why you relate that to health and safety as well, if it's in that area of earthquake and risks. So I appreciate that. Thank you for butting in there. You're welcome to the rest of the meeting. Please do. Particularly if you don't even hear us, let us know. So I think, Terry, you moved. Do I have a seconder for the receiving the report? I'll second that. Can I put the motion then, please? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Right, the LGFA. Pāku, thank you for your hard yards, and I look forward to our workshops. It'll be great. The LGFA statement of intent, past performance. Donna, is that something you want to speak to?
Yes, I can speak to it. So this report and the one that follows, they ones that we did add to the agenda because they came in after, they came in from our CCOs after the cut-off for the last agenda, and we normally do as part of the terms of reference of this risk insurance committee that they review these reports. So these are additional ones to be added in. The LGFA, that they're operating, they're tracking well, they're tracking to forecast. They've increasing their lending year on year. They're doing, they're still doing very well. We're still, even though we're seeing the increased interest rates, the high interest rates, we're still getting relatively good pricing. They're still getting relatively good pricing. They have had the last couple, and it's probably not in the 6-month report because it's more recent. They are a couple of the bonds and that are going out to tender with. They haven't been able to attract as much interest as normal, but that's, I guess, to be expected. But they're still able to provide enough, service enough debt and provide enough borrowing for a council for its to fund its councils. So, so I'll just take the report as read, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Yeah, Don, I've just got one if I can through the chair. I just interested to note that there's now, it's saying there's 77 councils involved now, so there are 2 new members, so there's not many left to join with it. That'd be about it, wouldn't
There's
it?
only one.
Only one, is it?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it was one.
78 is the total catchment, so
Yeah, right. So,
they're just about there.
so obviously it's a very wanted area for funding, and I can see going forward that it's still going to continue that. So they seem to be doing a good job, and we're using them, and we seem quite satisfied with it, what you're getting. Are you happy?
Definitely.
That's
Definitely,
good.
it's a really good relationship. It works well.
Yeah.
The accounts are interesting, in the sense of reflecting the balance or the risks they're managing as well. Perhaps I might be using the word risks, but their financial position and how they do it. I think you're quite right, Donna, that the future, what they're heading into, isn't necessarily the easiest to manage.
No.
And I noticed in their statement of intent summary, and that's page 47 of our agenda, they are reflecting narrower lending margins, which does suggest the level of challenge for essentially what is a local government vehicle to raise cheap debt.
So Bruce, I just asked you that comment. It's mainly bricks and mortar stuff that we're in there at the moment. If we change through the reforms of government into other social things, you think that's moving away from their core business?
I don't think they're necessarily saying they're moving away from their core business. I think what I saw here is that they don't know their future in relationship to water service entities. That is still something for them that they need clarity on, just as we need clarity on, and what will be their role with those water service entities. And I have a view, but it's not relevant to a public meeting. But that's obviously, you're also saying here.
Separation and sort of funding mechanisms. But anyway, so
what councils borrow for, you talk about bricks and mortar, etc., is actually a question of the quality of our financial strategies of those 77 local authorities. Why are we borrowing? What's it for? Rather than necessarily them. Their first interest is, do we have an appropriate process? Think, why are we borrowing? What's the quality of that financial strategy?
Do they dig into that, Donna? Do they dig into the applications of money? Exactly what you want it for? They look at the long-term plans?
Yes, they do. And we meet with them at least once a year. They come here, and we do provide them with our capital works program. We have quite a big discussion with them about that. So I'm assuming they do that with all the shareholding councils.
Okay.
It might be quite valuable. I don't know if it would ever coincide, but potentially if Andrew Michael was around, to have him even zoom into the meeting perhaps at some stage in the future.
He has offered.
Yes,
so
well, I think that would be
to come and talk to the committee.
They are critical to us, so I think that would be fine. The other thing then, Donna, that I just noticed was clearly their move into what do they call their green, social and sustainability lending. And clearly there's a modest margin there if you are involved in that, and they're obviously getting some capital subscription there to put those loans out, and maybe something as we go into the LTP that's well worth thinking about.
So is the Auckland spending 100 electric cars or something like that, huge number. Would they borrow money through this for that? Would that be the avenue for that?
Maybe not Auckland, because they're a borrower within their own right, aren't they?
Yes.
Have they got their own funding?
We do have green bonds.
Yeah.
Okay, there is a whole, but that's not through our GFA because Auckland have, as Don has quite recommended, their own external borrowing program. But they do and are able to gain some advantage through, I think they call green bonds. And really all I'm trying to do here is clearly a developing offering through our GFA, which would open a potential avenue for some, what should be given out, say, but cheaper money. If it's relevant for us for good use of debt, to do that.
It's not.
Yeah, I wouldn't, yeah, no, that's right. But hey, it does reflect equally, they're saying that it's where they can get subscriptions, you know, they can get the capital on the market on. We need to be aware of it. The market is saying, give us good quality, sustainable investments and we'll put money in there. So we should be thinking about that being a potential market move. Donna, can I ask a question? I didn't quite pick up, have we commented on the statement of intent? Do we need to do that, or is that moment past?
So no, the moment hasn't passed, so we can comment on the statement of intent.
I don't know whether we as members have a view. I open it up, but Donna, are you anticipating that management would put in or prepare a submission?
I've looked at their statement of intent and I really don't have any comment other than we would support it at this stage.
Yeah. Members, do you have a view from looking at this, whether there's any comment we'd want to make on the statement of intent?
Can you give us a bit more information on that? Because I'm not up to speed with that.
So the bottom line is that actually, Liam, LGFA is in its own right a CCO.
Yeah. So
it's doing what its obligations are in the Local Government Act, which is to provide a statement of intent to its shareholders. And what it's doing,
we are a shareholder.
Yeah, yes, we are. Yeah, and I think including a guarantor.
Yes,
So that gives us rights to comment on their direction of travel, which is what they have outlined in the statement of intent, which is the last, which is attachment E. So the real question is there anything that we'd want to say? Donna's indicated that actually no, other than support actually, which is in itself a potentially useful submission, albeit a very quick one. So the real question is then, would we want to either say that, or are there other things that we need to say in terms of its direction or mode of travel?
Have you got a comment, Bruce, about this?
I'm reasonably comfortable.
Hey.
Yeah. I mean, this does have other means of ongoing scrutiny through I think they call it, I'm about to say the Shareholders Council. I'm probably channeling Fonterra there, but I think they call it the Shareholders Council. This is an organisation that is close to its shareholders, because of course we're all lenders. Sorry, we're all borrowers. And so I'm reasonably comfortable at that end. I think it is a case of doing more good from what they can do. I think there's a big question mark over what is their position, both through water reform or after water reform, yes, and actually also what are our debt needs, which is going to change the relationship. And I think there's enough in there to say they're looking at that. I don't doubt they're not looking at that.
The vision is going to change. We need to read a guide the way it's going to go.
Yeah. So what that comes down to, Terry, is that if there was a supportive submission going back, I think I would be comfortable. That's probably relevant for us at Teams Coromandel, without creating any more work, unless there was a different view. Okay, well, let's move to the recommendation then. Lena, that's so, I'm writing over the fact that we probably don't need to put a submission in, but do you feel the need for more time on that?
No, I was just interested whether you had any further comments or background.
No. So it is that we receive, I guess we've provided comment, and that we delegate to Donna the chance to sign the necessary documentation. I think it's perhaps appropriate to reflect that
when it seems relevant, if there is a supportive short note about the statement, the direction, to know that that should be sent on behalf of council, that would be fine. So I don't think we should necessarily change. The committee receives, and I think that second one is just, I guess we have provided comment rather than provides comment. So we've provided comment on the draft statement intent, and that we delegate the Donna to sign the necessary documentation, which will include that supportive note. I'll move that from the chair to have a seconder, please. Thank you, Len. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. So another CCO in the form of CoLab, okay, which is a very similar task in front of us. That we want to make a submission? So Donna, is this you again? You're going to lead us on this, or would you like to make a comment before I open it up to the committee?
Yes, so it's exactly, it's a similar thing. They have to provide a 6-monthly performance on their performance in the past 6 months, and they also have to provide us with their statement of intent, which is in effect like the annual plan really for what they intend to do for the next financial year. And so this is what's been provided here. They have this with their statement of intent this time. They're looking at 4 areas of focus. One is CoLab Council, so they're looking at right people, right place. They're looking at really how what's going to look like post 3 Waters. They're looking at a democracy centre of expertise, and then they have another one they call low-hanging fruit, which is a bunch of stuff that they are looking at and basically investigating on whether they can provide, I guess, more efficiency for councils in certain parts of their processes and things by collaborating to get better deals. That's a very high level overview of what their statement intent is showing this year.
What's the level of our engagement with CoLab, Bonnie? How do you characterise Thames Coromandel's relationship with them?
So I'm on the working party, which I attend. I think we have about 4 meetings a year, where we review some of the work that they do and provide some feedback. There's various other people, quite a few other people in the organisation that have a relationship with CoLab for various things, including some of the work streams that they've got and some of the things that they do provide us. I would say, if I'm being honest, that our relationship with them is not great.
Perhaps I could comment. So I've come from the Bay of Plenty where we had Botplace, and Botplace was a really successful procurement initiatives, and it got quite a lot of stuff cheaply. It ran into all sorts of problems when it tried to do the shared services and so on. Coming here, I see similar with CoLab. I think that the insurance and some of the procurement stuff is the reason we want to be in the club. Some of the shared other stuff gets really tricky, and particularly when it starts to impinge in sovereignty, if you like, governance. You know, there are issues when you try to share services, and then suddenly the elected members' hands aren't as firmly on the steering wheel as it has been in the past. And I think that's where things start to get a little bit tricky. And that's probably where we have the most angst that I can see from CoLab. Paku is looking at a bit of a review across all of the things we do to try and work out where we sit. I think in the Bay, many of the councils at the end of the day found it a sort of a cost neutral exercise by the time you've put the money in and received the benefits back. But the thing that really secures it for me is that insurance, and particularly when we look at the long-term risks around getting insurance into the future, that's probably the key thing that makes it worthwhile for us. And look, that's only my superficial view of it. I haven't had a sufficient look into it.
That's a really good summary. Really good summary.
Thank you. So, so look, I've got Robin first, then Gary. Oh, and then Terry by the looks of it as well. Robin?
I note that we don't have a director on CoLab and that we're represented by somebody else. Would our relationship change if that was to change? Because I know that our previous chief executive was one of the directors. Yeah. Is that something we need to look at?
Potentially, and in the Bay of Plenty, all the CEs were directors.
Yeah.
And the theory around that was when they go to do something, the CE needs to be able to drive that decision into the organisation. here it's different, and I do feel completely disconnected from it.
So as a supplementary, have we got a good relationship with Don McLeod?
Yeah.
Great.
Have I had a conversation about CoLab? No.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, Gary, you got a question or comment? Gary, you are on mute.
It slipped under the radar for me. I just sort of hadn't taken much notice of this. What's the actual final cost to us to be part of this?
That's more difficult just to answer straight up here, Gary, because the cost, it depends on the services that we get, that we're providing. So we pay a membership cost, which, and I can't remember off the top of my head what that is.
Is it in the thousands or 100, or what is it roughly?
It's in the thousands.
Tens of thousands or thousands?
Can I just boundary ride?
Yes, so I'd rather actually provide that information back to you.
I wonder if we could just boundary ride the conversation. The task in front of us here is, do we want to comment on the statement of intent? I do sense there's also a question about the overall value, and that's a different conversation. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have it, by the way, albeit that if we were looking at value, Aileen's probably said the big thing that we benefit from here is being part of the insurance, which brings, to my understanding, substantial benefit to us as a small council needing to access, and it's increasingly difficult, insurance on a international scale, with increasing premiums and all the stuff that goes with it if we had Aon in the room. What I want to reflect on here is, do we want to make a comment on the statement of intent at this point? And I think we should keep ourselves with that. If there is a decision about ongoing membership, that's a different discussion. I think, quite frankly, a different day. I'm up for it, but I don't think it's necessarily what we need to do here, which is, do we make a submission?
And I also, as Aileen alluded to, that Paku is doing a review.
Right.
For us, so
that's
we're
natural.
going to be able to bring all that information.
Yeah, so that would naturally lead to that sort of conversation, which quite reasonably Gary's trying to sponsor. Yes, Terry.
So
I'm sorry, I just had one other thing, just for a slight smile. It's on page 81 and 87, a photograph of Peter Stubbs. I just wonder, has Dennis Teague reinvented himself?
okay.
I wouldn't be able to. Yes, Terry.
So I've always been concerned about this relationship, and it's only, I've just been recently, I knew the insurance as part of it, I didn't know it was the bigger part of it. Because I've always been looking for the outputs here, and they've always been visionary about what they're going to do, but never really done a lot. And I've queried this every time I look at it. And I look at this time, and there's really 3 statements here of what they're planning to do and where they're going. So where are the benefits outside the insurance? I don't know, and I don't hear them. So I'm saying, are we putting a lot of money into this? What's the benefit? If the insurance is the benefit, well, then I'm happy to move on. But I've never heard that before said about this operation.
Yeah. And
I understand how they put it in, but if 3 waters come along, how complex will that make this relationship? How easy? I don't know. So there's some questions that we need Paku to really come back to the council with and give us some clarity around this as being a beneficial or just an insurance deal.
Yep.
Some of that.
Yep. Thank you. I think that's exactly what Donna's saying, Terry. So if you're comfortable that we leave that aspect,
yes,
to Donna and Paku to come back. The question is there any comment that we'd want to make around statement of intent?
I just read this statement of intent. I can't comment any more than what they want to try and do.
You've got a more fundamental question, I think, Terry, which is what's the value, which I think is, which means we're probably wise not to comment on the statement of intent rather than anything else, because we haven't worked out the value proposition. I don't mean that in a negative sense. I just mean there's a piece of work that needs to happen. Donna, again, my same question. Were you anticipating this?
No, I wasn't.
Right. Okay. So I think we're probably agreeing that is the position that we hold at the moment.
Yeah.
What I would reflect, and I think you might have even used the word, Donna, it's a bit like a club. You get out of a club what you put in. And so I think really the question that Paku is going to help us try and answer is how involved in this club do we want to be? Yes, Steve.
Bruce, just picking up on what you just said, and on Monday I went to the Regional Transport Committee meeting, and the theme there for me, I think, is reflected also in what you just said. You get out of it, put in, and one of the important realizations for me at that Transport Committee meeting is that our voice at that table needs to be heard. We've got to be there, and if we're not there, there is this disconnect that Aileen was talking about. So our involvement in these organisations and our voice at the table becomes critical as we move forward. So it's in some ways it's up to us. Absolutely. How much and how loud and how strong our voice is, and how much contribution we put in and how much we get back out. So we're looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah. Yes, Martin.
Yeah, and I know CoLab had put on a series of seminars and things around induction for new members. I wasn't able to get across to any of them. I'm not sure how many of our elected members managed to get to any of them. I think the number may be 0.
Donna and I went.
Yes. But yes, I mean, I'm completely unable to assess what value they might have given to elected members, and yeah, whether there's any opportunity for any, follow-up type stuff, I don't know, but yeah. But that again is outside.
Yes, that's right. I think, and I'm sure Parker will look at probably the way in which we are connected, and the value of that, the cost that you've prompted. But I actually also think the other part to the report, Parker, you probably have your own way to do it, is actually what is the potential? Because I think perhaps in the way you're saying, Len, there are other councils who probably have a much more positive view, if I can put it that way, at least not a more than a neutral view about CoLab. And it would be interesting to understand why is it a value proposition to them. And I also like your comment, Aileen, about the structural nature of actually, if it is going to provide value, how do we ensure the balance between our need to have our sovereign rights preserved, but also how do we gain value out of collaboratively working with our colleagues? That's high level, but I think that's sort of where I'm hearing the conversation go. So that leads us then to the recommendations which we firstly receive. I think again we can note that we have provided comment. Perhaps we should just note that we do not propose to submit at this stage. I think is that relevant? Yeah, because you got. Oh no, we can leave it the way it is. Delegate to Donna. Is there anything you'd have to sign? That's what I'm trying to say. Is there anything you signed between?
I think there's
just a short letter saying that we thank you and we have no comment at this stage. Okay, brilliant. So we'll leave the recommendations as they stand, other than to put in the past tense. We have provided comment. Is there any? I'm sorry, I'll move that from the chair to over. Thank you, Martin. Any discussion on the motion? Being none, I'll put all those in favour. Please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Been a poor timekeeper. It is time for morning tea. It's 10:35. I'd like to suggest we come back at 10:50, please.
I second it.